Dober dan vsem skupaj. Očitno smo imeli malo tehničnih težav pri vklopu. Dobrodošli na prvi založniški akademiji, ki se dogaja v virtualnem okolju. Na njej pa se bomo posvetili problemom založništva v koronskem času, pri čemer se ne bomo usmerili seveda samo na slovenske težave, ampak bomo poskušali tisto, kar se dogaja v Sloveniji, postaviti v nek širši evropski kontekst. Zato sem povabil v ta pogovor 4 goste. Najprej seveda iz Slovenije Almo Čavšević, ki je izvršna direktorica založbe Beletrina in ki je ena od tistih založb v Sloveniji, ki ima najbolj razvito digitalno infrastrukturo. Potem sem pa povabil še 3 kolege iz tujine. Runas Gudinavičius sedi v Litvi, trenutno v Vilniusu, kjer je direktor Vilnius University Pressa in je hkrati tudi eden od evropskih bolj vidnih raziskovalcev založništva. In je v letošnjem letu med drugim pripravil tudi eno krajšo študijo o vplivih virusa COVID na manjša evropska založništva, pri kateri sem nekaj malega sodeloval tudi sam. Potem imamo pa še 2 gosta iz drugih koncev Evrope. Mož v Reboot majici je Carlo Carreño, ki je sicer po rodu Brazilec, vendar trenutno sedi v Štokholmu in je med drugim lastnik največjega južnoameriškega časopisa za založnike Pub News, to je neke vrste južnoameriška in španska bukla, hkrati je pa seveda strokovnjak za trženjske analize knjižnih trgov. In na koncu še Rüdiger Vischenbart, ki je založniški veteran, analitik knjižnih trgov in seveda organizator številnih profesionalnih izobraževalnih programov za založnike. On je seveda doma iz Avstrije in je tako rekoč naš bližnji sosed. Ta debata bo seveda potekala v angleščini. Po debati bomo pa objavili obširne povzetke v slovenščini, tako da boste se lahko tudi tisti, ki niste tako vešči angleščine, se seznanili s tem, o čemer se pogovarjamo. Posnetek bo seveda na razpolago tudi na YouTubeu. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, I will switch to English now, and my first question in this debate goes to Rüdiger. Rüdiger, you, together with Carlo, you organized a set of workshops and a conference called Reboot, which Carlo is advertising with his T-shirt, to which you invited a set of publishers and booksellers from all around the world. And these people discussed the impact of Corona on publishing and bookselling, simply put. And I have a very, very simple question. The participants at the conference discussed a set of innovations and different approaches they invited to survive in these new circumstances. And my question is, can you say a few words about those book sales approaches that you found most innovative in Corona time and which were discussed in your conference? And is there any common denominator of successful publishing adaptation to these new circumstances?
I want to emphasize 3 points, basically. Number 1, when we speak about the impact of the virus, we must avoid one important misunderstanding. The virus is not the same everywhere. It makes a big difference if you are a rich market or if you are poor developing market. It makes a difference if you have a very sound readership, consumer structure, and publishing and bookselling infrastructure, or if you are already more on the precarious side. And it makes a big difference as a consumer if you have a job or if you don't have a job, if you have money or if you don't have money. So that is really pulling things and people and countries apart, number one. Number two, nevertheless, it was really very, very interesting to see that one pattern was the same all around. We had as one example, the largest German book chain, Thalia, represented by their CEO and co-owner, Michael Busch, and their digital director, Birgit Hagmann. They do a turnover of roughly 1.3 billion euros. They are roughly at the same level of sales as Amazon in Germany and Austria and Switzerland. And they already before the pandemic struck and before they had a lockdown, they had started to develop what they called an omni-channel approach, a strategy where they said, whatever we do it both in physical stores and online. And they already had started to create a network where that giant company was preparing to collaborate even with competitors, allowing small, medium-sized independent bookshops to use these same omni-channel tools. And when the lockdown was declared, overnight they had to accelerate this, but it worked. And it was a big push of motivation for all these teams. And they were very, very successful in experimenting, in trying out every day in a new way how to maintain the contact, the direct relationship to the consumer, to the customer, regardless if it was click and collect, so that a consumer would order a book online and then pick it up at the bookshop, or when the lockdown was over, to reconnect in physical shopping, etc. And that was creating a model that throughout the conference, wherever we had our guests coming from, we found the same thing. We had a small Mexican publisher who said, well, we did the same thing. Mexico is a very different market. They were not a giant, but a very small independent retailer and publisher. And they spent days and nights to connect to the consumer and create and strengthen and further develop that community. And this Mexican publisher coined a phrase that was really striking in its simplicity and in its wisdom. He said, we live in good times for those who survive it, which means because they were very innovative, because they had all that spirit of innovation and of experimentation and of collaboration with others. They didn't do stuff just by themselves. They worked with others. They could find new tricks and they could navigate across the crisis very smoothly. But, and that's a very big but, not everyone would be in a position to survive. So we must be very clear, we will have a lot of collateral damage. We don't perhaps see it now, but once we move into next year, when money is running out at many companies, we will face very difficult times. And that brings me to my third point, which is very quick. One word, consumers. Being consumer-centric is the key. Publishing had for 2 centuries the luxury that a publisher thought his job was to produce a book. And all the other people, the booksellers, etc., the media, had to take care of this. This is wrong. This is not viable anymore. We need, in everything that we do, as an author, as a publisher, as a retailer, as media, think from the angle of the consumer, and then we will create interesting and successful things.
Okay, thank you very much. Carlo, your primary expertise is South America, but now you are living in Sweden, and Sweden is widely discussed because of its approach to Corona around the Europe, and also because of its publishing industry. Because if I got the Federation of European Publishers data correct, the Swedish book industry actually didn't lose much in the times of first Corona wave. Can you say a few words why it is so?
Sure. First, a little context. So, yes, there was no radical lockdown in Sweden, and the bookstores remained open. But I remember a particular day, I think it was April, I decided to go to the largest bookstore in Stockholm. And it's the largest one in Sweden. And believe me, it was like 2 p.m. and was the only person in the bookstore. So it was open, but there was no one there. So you need to keep that in mind as well. So basically, during those months, the sales of books through the bookstores went down. So in March and April, more or less, we had 35% less sales of books. However, as anything related to Corona, the trends just accelerate. The Corona is a big catalyzer of things that are already happening. So what's going on this year, as it was last year, is that audiobook subscriptions are growing a lot. So two things happen here. First, the loss of sales in bookstores are not as bad as in other countries. So I have the numbers from the Publishers Association till the end of August. So from January to August, the physical bookstores only lost 17%. And I think they're recovering now. The supermarkets lost 4.5%. But the digital subscription services in those 8 months grew up 32%. So in the market as a whole, the market until August grew up an extraordinary 7.4% in publishers' revenues. But that's due a little bit of resisting the Corona in a different way, but also because the digital audio subscriptions are skyrocketing. So I think any analysis you do about the Corona, you need to analyze it in the context of things that already happened. So it just got faster. Storytel, which is the largest audiobook subscription platform here in Europe, they said that by the end of March, the number of new subscribers doubled the normal rate. So they really realized that the people were going to that format. So anything you talk books about Sweden, it's impossible not to talk audiobook subscriptions. This year, the publishers' revenues from audio in fiction, the publishers' revenues from audio book subscriptions will be half of their own revenues in fiction. So in other words, the money that comes from audio is the same that comes from print books for fiction. So that's what really, influences and says everything about the Swedish market today.
But of course, this is a trend which is going on for quite a while, I assume. Audio
exactly. It just went faster. So last year it was like that too, but the bookstores didn't go down so much in sales. So this year the bookstores, the physical bookstores and supermarkets lost more because of Corona, and the digital audio grew even more than what was supposed to grow because of Corona. But again, it accelerated something that was happening. So we are living 2020, maybe what we should reach in 2023, maybe. So it just accelerated things somehow.
So in one sentence, one would say that the formula for success is digital audio services and digital ebook services and combination of open bookstores.
Yeah, that happens because then you have access in all formats, but you also need to have a public that is mature in the sense of accepting these new formats, of course. So here, Sweden has a huge public of people that want to do audiobooks. Of course, that's not the format. If you compare to Brazil, my other market, audiobooks there is really slow, just starting. So of course, it didn't help the market much. Ebooks helped, but audiobooks not. So it depends on where you are in the market. I think Sweden was lucky to be very well developed in digital platforms, and to a certain point, not just to keep the bookstores open, but to keep the whole economy a lot more open than the other countries. So of course, that didn't influence consumption so badly.
Okay, so let's switch to Slovenia a little bit. Alma, you are executive director of Beletrina, which is the publishing house that runs most of Slovenian ebook business in trade markets. So what were your experiences during the Corona times?
Thank you. Yeah, just to make a frame, actually Biblos is ebook lending, ebook selling system. And it is implemented in all of the public libraries in Slovenia. Predominantly, it runs as an ebook lending system. And in some contexts, we could say that it actually represents, in some way, a national e-lending system. This year so far has been very interesting. It has been a year full of challenges, full of changes, and in some sense, it was a year of turnovers. What I find interesting is that I believe that somehow people started to turn back to some basic value system. They started to search for things that fulfill them, and luckily one of those things were apparently books. So we could see a big increase in reading in general. We saw a big increase in new readers, the old readers or some readers who didn't have the ability to read came back to reading, and passionate readers started to read more. So in some sense, I can say that during the pandemics, when there was a shutdown, the public life stopped, there was a special addition to it in Slovenia, as the public libraries and the libraries in general closed their doors. This means that actually the only working library or the only access to a library in a country was through digital channels. So it was the library that we run, it was Biblos. So subsequently, it was quite interesting that I think that only in 3 or 4 days, the number of lended ebooks tripled, the number of users doubled, and the number of ebook readers, so the purchase of ebook readers, grew immensely.
You mean the devices for ebook reading?
Yeah. So to make the long story short, actually the ebook market flourished in a second, in a few days. And if I could break it down to step-by-step count or to step-by-step description, I would say that what happened is that, and what we must know, that we in Slovenia are more of a book lenders than a book buyers. So we lend books a lot, and we don't buy all of the books that we want to read normally, or most of them. So what happened is, I think that the printed book readers and lenders actually tried or went to being ebook lenders and readers, and then many of them started to become or develop interest in the so-called digital gadgets or digital gadgets on the market. So subsequently they bought e-readers, and slowly we see an increase in buying ebooks, so that readers are actually starting to buy ebooks and starting to acknowledge ebooks as a form of reading that suits them. Now, if we go back to the printing books in this time, as for us, Beletrina, actually we have an approximately same result than from a year before COVID. Maybe even a little growth, but I must emphasize here that, like Rediger said, Beletrina turned a lot towards the customers in the last 3 years, and through the digital marketing and through the digital channels especially. So I think that in some sense it was very important that we never stopped. We were still publishing books during the corona, and we were extensively advertising and marketing them. So I think this is the one of the main points of this good result in this year.
Some technical problems on my side, sorry. Arunas, you did a small study on impact of corona to small European book markets. Can you say a few things about the findings?
Yeah, we together with Professor Michał Kovač did that small study. It was study in 4 small language book markets: Lithuania, Iceland, Slovakia, and Slovenia. And we did 2 surveys, one in May, just after the lockdown, after the first wave of pandemic. And second survey was in August, just before a second wave. And overall results showed that the sales of all books in these 4 small book markets was decreased. Almost half of respondents reported that their sales were down for more than 40%. So it's a huge number, 40% down. Every third of a publisher reported sales down up to 40%. And just 17% of respondents answered that lockdown had no significant impact on sales of all books. I mean, printed books and e-books. Also, we noticed some significant difference between these 4 countries. And it seems that Iceland and Lithuania were only 2 countries in which small set, around 15% of publishers reported increased sales of all books. And there were no such publishers in Slovakia and Slovenia who reported increased sales. And the most affected country by sales decline seems to be Slovenia, where all respondents reported decreased sales. I'm looking at some numbers. Half of Slovenian publishers reported sales down to 70%, more than 70%. Another 40% of publishers reported from 40 up to 70% sales down. So it's a huge numbers. And the least affected country of these 4 countries was Lithuania, my own country, with only approximately 2/3 of respondents reporting decreasing sales of all books. And after 3 months, in August 2020, book sales improved in Slovenia. These results showed our second survey, but remained more or less the same in Lithuania. Also, it's worth of noting what it was a correlation between the lockdown performance and the size of publishing companies. Publishers with less than 10 employees reported more frequently no significant impact on sales to compare with larger publishers. So it seems that smaller publishing houses were more resistant to the lockdown. And in general, respondents in 2 countries with highest online sales and highest audiobook and ebook income, these 2 countries was Lithuania and Iceland, were less struck with COVID lockdown to compare with publishers in Slovakia and Slovenia, which rely more on traditional book formats and sales channels. So this is just few short results from our this joint survey with Professor Kovac.
Okay, thank you. So simply put, we should say that the countries with more developed digital infrastructure suffered less. That was one of the findings.
This more developed, you know, it's still a very low numbers. In Lithuania, we have overall, I don't know, 5% of ebook sales, but in Slovenia, even less. So,
yeah, well, Alma, this is a good opportunity to return to you. In general, I think we all agree that some effects of this first wave and now of the second wave, which is going on right now, these changes which were created by the pandemics will very likely stay with us for a longer time. What do you think, which changes will be the most sustainable, and what do you think, what will be the main, let's say, publishing skills that will be needed in this future situation?
Well, we already see that the situation has changed. If I look at the Slovenian market or at the Slovenian digital market, so the ebook market, the fact is that actually readers did turn to ebooks, and in the new year we are adding the audiobooks into this system, so I think that will even rise. People actually are becoming more and more digital. We are not as much, if I can use the term, afraid of the digital, or not as afraid of it as we were before Corona. I believe that we even started to find benefits that the digital environment might offer. We started to see them clearly. And regarding the publisher and the skills that the publisher will need to develop, in my opinion, I think that we will have to start thinking publishing in a new, fresh perspective. I think that we live in an ever-changing world, but I think that this change will have to become a normality. We will have to adopt to it. In some sense, I think that it will not be enough to only look out of the box. We will have to step out of it and maybe take long walks from time to time around the landscape that we do not know, that is unknown to us. I think that we will have to think about different business models. This is very important. It is important to develop completely new marketing strategies and new distributional channels. I find the biggest challenge in making new investments. This is for me something that is quite worrying, and when I'm thinking about investments, I'm thinking about investments in digital marketing. And these are not one-time investments or investments that come every second, third, or fifth year. They are investments which are there from day to day, from year to year, just so far to adapt to the ever-changing digital reality and digital technologies that come. If we look mobile applications, etc., it is something that you have to go along with, to be there and to stay a part of the market, to say. So this is for me quite challenging. And another thing is what you all stressed and Rediger stressed extensively, it is that we will have to go to the consumers. We will have to make new communities of our readers. We will just simply have to be there, and we will have to be there not only in a physical sense, but we will have to be there in the digital lives of our readers. So these are pretty much the challenges that we will face, I believe, and that we will have to go through them and place ourselves on the ever-changing, big and imaginative, no-ending digital reality.
Okay, thank you. Well, let's move to another small European market, 1,500 kilometers up north, the Lithuanian market, and then tackle a few global issues. Arunas, how do you see these things from Lithuanian perspective? What will happen in Lithuanian publishing now? What do you see are the most important skills needed for publishers? What do you see, what kind of changes will have to take place on the market?
Yeah, in the era before the pandemic, I would say most of Lithuanian publishers do not understand and do not want to invest into these new technologies, as Alma just described, for ebook production and distributions. Most of Lithuanian publishers are not interested. And this pandemic forced them to start to think, at least, and to do something towards ebook production and distribution. So I can agree with Rudiger, who said that for those who survived the pandemic, they will be stronger. So I believe Lithuanian publishers also will get to know some new technologies of ebooks, especially in ebooks field. I'm not sure I'm answering, Miha, your question.
No, I think you answered it, and I see this situation as pretty much Darwinistic, in the way that those who will adapt will survive and those who will not adapt will somehow disappear. Yeah. Well, Carlo, you are one of the most global publishing persons I know. I mean, you started your career in Brazil with Pub News, then you extended Pub News to Spanish-speaking part of South America and then to Spain. And now you are living in Sweden and doing all these operations from Sweden, and you are still a kind of a market analyst and audio specialist. And I have a very simple question for you. Is there anything, I mean, if you look at the publishing world globally, are there any common skills and competencies that are needed for publishers in these new circumstances? Or is there no such global thing?
No, I think there is, and I think amazingly they're showing that. I'm a very pessimistic person, to be honest. So in the beginning of the pandemic, I just imagined that half the publisher would just perish because they won't be able to adapt. So I think the main characteristic you're gonna need is adaptability to new business models and to new ways of selling books, to new formats. That was all needed last year, by the way, but that was not like mandatory. You could try to resist, and then there was not this option anymore. But I want to tell you a little anecdote of what happened in Brazil that I think is amazing. Bookwire, which is a digital aggregator, is a very important aggregator. They're from Germany, but it's a very important aggregator in Brazil with their local operation there. And I've been helping them for years, to get content, to talk to publishers, to get their catalogs into ebooks, to make all the conversion. It's been a very tough job. They succeeded, and today they have most of the publishers on board. Everything's okay. But on the day that the pandemic really started, and I think everyone here had this day in your own country. It's not the same day, but that's the day when, okay, now it's serious. That's the day when I went out and bought an axe. Not because I needed one, but that's just the perfect excuse to have one. So that's the day I went out, bought all this stuff I didn't need. And so in this day in Brazil, the director of Bookwire, in a space of like 6 hours, got 20 telephone calls from publishers, all desperate to digitalize as much as they wanted from their catalog. And actually succeeded, and actually created lots of campaigns. So in Brazil, during the high pandemic, the publishers start to sell ebooks very cheaply or give it for free to create a market. So Bookwire, in 6 weeks, more or less, they distributed 9.5 million digital books, while in 2019 alone, they distributed less than 12 million. And that was just 6 weeks. So then they think skyrocketed. So I'm using this as an example of what I think publishers need to have is the capacity to adapt and to adapt faster. I hope we've learned a lesson because the other entertainment industries are adapting faster than us. So if you are too slow, we might lose terrain to these other industries. But on a positive note, I think from Italy to Brazil, from Mexico to Russia, Sweden, people adapted pretty fast. And they were able to, to resist and to keep their business. Another thing I think we should talk, sorry, Miha, but going back a little bit, make a comment on the other answers, is Amazon, right? So, Amazon, in Brazil, Amazon is skyrocketed. So we had a situation where the two largest book publishers, booksellers chains in Brazil were collapsed in 2010, 2019. So that was already a problem. And then you had the corona. But then Amazon, honestly, in Brazil, they really saved the market because they grew a lot, but then there was an easy solution to sell your books, especially through marketplaces and stuff like that. And I think in other countries where Amazon is really big, I think that was the case as well. To a point that, I don't know if you saw that, Richard Tarkin wrote this letter to Bezos last week, almost thanking Amazon for what they have done. Also criticizing them, of course, but thanking them. So when you see a publisher like Richard Tarkin writing a letter to Bezos to recognize some of the good things of Amazon's, wow, that's quite a change. And probably the most amazing change that happened in this pandemic was exactly this. Publishers finally understood that lots of new business models and the digital formats and the digital sales, online sales, are actually very beneficial if you use it in a good way. So I think that's what this mentality, this Richard Tarkin way of seeing the world now, that's what all publishers need worldwide.
And I'm sure Jeff Bezos likes it.
Well, of course.
Rüdiger, would you want to add something to this? Do you see also the adaptability as the main competence of publishers in this ever-changing world, or you see also something else as important?
I need to water down that brilliant spirit a little bit. It's funny to see Richard Tarkin writing a letter in praising Jeff Bezos, because normally they have all these publishers, big and small, that wonderful reputation and role of having one hate figure, that is Jeff Bezos, and all the bad things in the world are easy to blame on him. In fact, what happened over the past half year was a big promotional campaign in favor of Jeff Bezos and Amazon by the traditional publishers, where they had failed to innovate very basic things. I'm not speaking rocket science, where they had failed to innovate over the years and years and years and years. Let me give you one little anecdote and then explain the details behind it. A couple of weeks ago, I wanted to order a hardcover copy, so no fancy ebook, of an American bestseller, Stephanie Meyer's new book, Midnight Sun, we all remember that craze of the Twilight series. And she had brought out a new volume in July in English. And it was, of course, all the craze of 14, 15-year-old girls all over the world. And I tried to get a copy of the English original for the daughter of friends who wanted to read that in English. And I ordered it at a small bookshop in Vienna, which has one of the best online shops of all the independent bookshops that I know. So they had done their homework properly, and they have a good shop, and they are very good at servicing, etc., etc. I placed the order, and I got a note: "Thank you for your order, but we have no idea when we can fulfill it, because the wholesalers are not prepared in quickly delivering such a title." That means a number of things. Number one, this is a bestseller, even in English, in the German language market. They don't stock, they are not in a position to quickly retrieve that from the wholesaler. Number two, that wholesaler who is supposed to deliver overnight has decided right after the end of the lockdown, when it was to catch up with the losses, the wholesaler had decided to reduce the quality of delivery to small bookshops. Normally, they would bring a book, an order within 24 hours. And all the book industry is very fond of that service, every title within 24 hours. Now, the wholesaler decided to deliver to the small bookshops only twice a week. So, number one, they have reduced the catalog. Amazon, that's the Promo Pro Amazon that I'm talking about. Amazon has that big catalog. Number two, they reduced the service quality by delivering to the small bookshops only twice a week instead of every day of the week. While Amazon, of course, is fulfilling orders every day. Number three, we all know the importance of small independent bookshops for diversity, for being close to the customer. But obviously, the quality of the catalog at the disposal of these bookshops is less and less perfect. But what they can do, they were during the lockdown even delivering orders by bicycles to their customers just to keep that customer contact alive. But when they don't get the books from the wholesaler, what should they do? So what they did was to send an automatic email to a customer like myself saying, sorry, but we cannot fulfill your order as we would want to. So when, and that brings me to that very, very crucial point that Alma mentioned before. The real important trick will be how to fix the supply chain, how to improve fulfillment. And that requires investments. Investments not only in digitizing books and doing audiobooks, but just in order to make the whole thing work at standards that are appropriate. And I think that's the real survival question for the next years. If the book trade, the publishers, the retailers, the wholesalers say, oh, the cost is too high and we do only the delivery every other week or something like this, or if they say, okay, we have to get our act together and need to fulfill the expectations of the client. And here, what Carlos says with regard to audiobooks and that huge rise in all of Scandinavia of subscription comes into play. For years and years and years, we have been told subscriptions is a business model that doesn't work for books. Now, surprise, surprise, we see there is a situation where subscriptions are really working. Same with library lendings. Yeah, we have been told that libraries are cannibalizing sales. Now they are the live link to the consumers, not only in Slovenia, also in Scandinavia and in many more markets. That brings me back to my consumer strategy. Yeah, so we really need to take that opportunity of an accelerated innovation triggered, pushed by COVID, and get serious that books must find again their place in a new landscape, in a landscape where we don't have only Amazon, but Spotify and Storytel and all these, and Netflix, and all these things operate differently, but very close to the consumer. Yeah, and that is for me the real challenge of the moment, and that is the reason why I am a little bit cautious with all these statistics that we find that the market was shrinking only by X%. No, there was a big recovery, but the stationary brick and mortar stores in all the markets that I have been observing have twice as many losses as compared to the overall market. Yeah, so there is a widening gap, and that gap is defined by these broken supply chains, and that gap needs to be fixed by investing, by putting money smartly to the right things to fix that supply chain. Sorry if that was a little bit a lot, but I think that's really the crucial thing, fixing the nuts and bolts of the business in a very serious and also in a very smart way.
Yeah. Okay, well, I wanted to ask you something else, but and I will do it now. I mean, you are one of the book fair veterans. You've seen many Frankfurts. Like me, you remember the days where there was Yugoslavia and Soviet Union participating in Frankfurt. And this year, Frankfurt somehow disappeared to digital environment, same as Ljubljana Book Fair. And my question is very simple, and this is a kind of a warming up to a local debate which we will have at 2 o'clock about the future of book fairs. Where do you see the Frankfurt Book Fair in next few years?
Just, I guess, yesterday or the day before, I had at once a little bit of a flash, intuition. For me, there are two crucial points about what might be book fairs in the future, in the next year. The organizers of book fairs have of commercial book fairs, have one big challenge. All the publishing companies had 1 full year to figure out how to bypass and not spend all the money for a big stand in Frankfurt, for a big stand and very costly stand in London, etc. And all the controlling officers, the financial departments, will talk to their CEOs and say, why on earth should we spend thousands and thousands of euros, dollars, whatever, dirhams, next year to rent so much space on a dull fair? Of course, there will be physical fairs, but spending, yeah? I mean, if you take the business model of a book fair, it all goes into real estate, meaning the carpentry of setting up a stand, boards, all that things, and hotels and planes. So that's all not really productive money. So most likely, if I am not entirely wrong, Penguin Random House, Hachette, Ladinska, all these companies, Bonnier, will go to Frankfurt next year if there is a physical fair, and I'm almost certain that there will be a physical fair, and will have reduced their stands by 2/3, 3/4, and the stands will look totally different and be much smaller. And that is a big business problem for the fair organizer, because it's just their income which will be slashed. That's the one thing. The other thing is, we realize that cultural life is so much about being together. I mean, it's nice to talk here between us, but it's not the real thing as compared to having a coffee. Yeah. And I was attending a conference over the weekend in Austria, where at least we had a small physical stage and a few people, no audience, but the tech people and the operations people in the room. And it was all different and so much more fun. So perhaps a big portion of these book fairs will be much, much more, even as in the past, cultural, in the meaning of getting together, debating, having the coffee, having the glass of wine, being an event, like a theatrical performance and stuff like this. So there might be a big shift towards the culture being at the forefront, and not the business, and the business getting off online and into totally different models. And that means that the money spent on these events will be distributed entirely differently. That would be my prediction.
So simply put, we will stop pretending that we go to Frankfurt just for drinking and partying.
Exactly. We will just say, oh, good, we need finally that coffee and wine and reception, and all the rest we can do online before and after.
Okay, so we have just a few minutes left, and I'd like to ask one very simple fortune-telling question in a manner of old gypsy lady who looks in the coffee and predicts the future. I have a question. Where do you see your respective markets a year after Corona is gone? And I'd like to start with you, Alma.
Well, it is fortune telling, isn't it?
Of course.
Well, yeah, I think that for sure, the book market will get digitalized. I think that first we, the publishers or the ones who work in the publishing business, will have to do the first organization, and we will have to provide digital worlds. We will have to think about book living in the digital world. We will have to take it there, and we will have to work on it to keep it there. This is one of the challenges, and through this I'm talking most of all about digital marketing. I'm talking about digital channels, social media, new concepts, and I think this is here to stay, and it will be here next year. Surely we will have events. We all are truly looking forward to the events, but this digital reality will stay. And I think that it will even become one of the biggest distributional channels when it comes to printed books, to say. Of course, ebooks. And one more thing, I think that it will come, and we are also thinking about it because we have to think about it. And this is taking that long walk. I think that we will have to consider subscription models. This is something that I think is doable, and we will have to develop strong B2C, so business to customer relations in this sense. So I see future most of all in that, working on digital and having a good time in physical normal life. So it will get divided, and here I agree with Rüdiger that even when we're thinking strategies, this is the way our thoughts are going.
Okay, thank you. Arunas, the same question.
Yeah, I hope that the pandemic is not a threat for book reading overall. And I expect Lithuanian market will change in digital direction as well. I guess the sales of ebooks will be doubled or tripled after a year, and it's a good sign, I guess, because more and more readers are wanting to read ebooks. Personally, I had a lot of requests from students, from Vilnius University students. They said, give me ebooks, not the printed books, because I don't want to go to physical bookshop or library. So it's a time of opportunities for publishers, I guess.
Okay, thank you. Carlo, I have the same question for you, but of course with a little bit more global overview.
Oh, wow. Okay. I was thinking just about Sweden. Let me answer Sweden first.
Go ahead with Sweden then.
Yeah. I think when after pandemic, I think the digital subscriptions models will be like amazingly huge. I think less than 20% of the fictional books will be consumed as reading and will be audio. But I also think because of this huge acceleration, the subscription model will be better developed and better balanced in terms of payments to the whole book chain. So the way that the subscription model is today is kind of very fragile, and the payments to publishers are going lower and lower. So you have to adapt. I still think it's a working process, the whole subscription model. So I think the subscription model will prevail, but be better and be more fair to everyone involved in the system. As in the world, I think, go back to our Mexican friend, the survivors will have a very good time. I think it's gonna, in a very Darwinian or Darwinistic, I don't know how to say that in English, way, the survivors will be a lot stronger, will be better adapted. And I think the book market that was afraid that could collapse will actually be a lot stronger. And you're getting these reports already from people that are surviving. They're very optimistic. So that's what really got a reboot in that conference, was everyone really showing how they are surviving and you know, succeeding. So it was, I think it's a very positive and optimistic note.
Okay, thank you. And Rudiger, your final word on this?
I guess starting with the German language market, which is both Germany big and Austria small, the three big corporate publishing groups, Bonnier, Hachette, Holtzbrinck, and Bertelsmann Random House, will be much stronger after the crisis than before. The small publishers, who already are the ones doing the small part of the Austrian book market, catered by Austrian publishers, they are very, very small, will basically not be business operations anymore, but cultural operations financed through public funding. So we will have that kind of gap. We will have also a gap between elder consumers and readers on the, or audiobook consumers on the one hand, who will do things totally different from young readers. I guess that fragmentation will increase very dramatically, and therefore I guess it will be more and more, self-publishing will be much more important, particularly for what the young readers are wanting. So I think that that segmentation that we already saw over the past years will be accelerated dramatically to the point that we will ask ourselves, is there still one book market, or are there many different islands in a sea that is made of music and movies and Netflix and books and audiobooks, and we will have, according to different audience groups, different islands that are inhabited by the different groups.
Okay, thank you very much. We spent 1 hour discussing this, so we came to the end of this panel. I thank you very much for participating in this, and I owe you, each of you, a glass of wine, a glass of beer, a big cappuccino, whatever you deserve. Next time when we
it will be remembered.
Oh, I know, Carlo. I have no doubts about it.
We will be there. We will be there.
Yeah. We just need to find a nice place to meet.
No problem in Ljubljana.
Yeah, by the river.
Hopefully. Okay, thank you very much. And this is it for today. And for the audience of this event, we talk tomorrow at 11 o'clock about Norwegian book publishing policies. Thank you and goodbye.
Thank you.
Thank you.